thank you very much for coming along. You are very welcome to our, what do we call it now, our ePortfolio Unconference Unpicked. So that we'll explore how one might run an unconference. So, you know, of me, or haven't spent most of the morning with me already. My name is Lisa Donaldson and I'm working in Dublin City University. I'm a learning technologist there. I've been with DCU about 8 years now. And my main priority within that role is the implementation of the ePortfolio rollout across the university. So we started with a very small pilot of ePortfolio back about 4 years ago. The small pilot turned into 5,000 users within the first 2 months. So it was a rather larger pilot than we were anticipating. So you could say I've had a baptism of fire with ePortfolio. And since then, it's grown in leaps and bounds within Dublin City University. And we use it extensively for assessment, but we also use it from the perspective of, to clarify, assessment would be very much individual module assessment design, as opposed to anything that's programmatic or institutional. But we also use it to help the students map their extracurricular activities. And it's also used for all of our placement modules. Very extensively, you'll not be surprised to hear, across education and across our nursing faculties, our health courses. But we're also beginning to see it filter into a large number of disciplines. So my involvement with ePortfolio, given that we had, and I had little experience with it 4 years ago, was to reach out to others in the community, but there was no community at that point in Ireland. So I set up a community called ePortfolio Ireland. There were a number of institutions across the country who were beginning to think about ePortfolio, and it does take a village, so we helped one another. And we had a number of events. We started small with just a number of roundtable events where we just shared experiences of where we were with ePortfolio, what we'd done, what we'd found effective. And then with a small bit of funding that I procured, I happened upon the idea of an unconference, not realizing that this was something actually that had been done within the IS and IT field, programming specifically. So I got a couple of like-minded colleagues together, and we ran wasn't Ireland's first unconference, but it was Ireland's first unconference that was powered by digital tools. Because most unconferences to date, now this is obviously pre-COVID, relied on paper. So I'm going to share with you some of the tools and what the concept is of an unconference. So what is an unconference? And that screen grab that you see there is typically what an unconference, how it was run or organized previously. But the idea is, rather than a organized, structured conference setting where the conference topics are pre-proposed and put into an agenda, and then you have to find something that is of interest to you when you arrive at the conference. Instead of that very structured approach, this is participant driven. So you arrive at your conference venue, in our case, our Zoom room today. When we did it before, we were face-to-face. So participants arrived in the room and are given an opportunity to share what they would like to discuss, what questions they may have that they would like answered, perhaps some, experiences they have that they would like to share that, you know, didn't perhaps get captured as part of a formal conference proposal. So the idea behind it is that it does support that peer-to-peer discussion and learning, and it's certainly very collaborative. The way it's typically done is that these topics, while they're not predetermined, they're determined in the room. And the way that it's been done previously is that it's been done on a piece of paper, as you can see on in the screenshot there. Those pieces of paper are then stuck onto a physical board, which has been marked out with different time slots. Now, the sting in the tail is if you propose a topic, you lead it. Okay, so that caused some great consternation and excitement amongst some people in our own conference when they realized that, even though it was stated in advance. So the topics are created organically. The agenda is created organically. And most important, the rule of 2 feet comes into play. So I know a lot of us, when we go to conferences, if you're not sure if that topic is going to be of interest to you, you'll hover close to the door so you can perhaps back out gracefully. Well, with an unconference, it's expected that if the topic, if perhaps you've contributed enough, what you have to contribute, and you've learned enough, you move on. If you walk into the room and it's not what you want to learn, then you move on to the next room or the next topic. So it's expected. Nobody takes any offense to people coming and going as part of the conference, unconference. So how does that sound so far? Would you greet that with trepidation, or is that something that you think might be of interest to you in your context? Throwing it out there. Chat or open your mic. There's only a few of us here.
I love that idea, especially for faculty learning communities. I can imagine that this would be a really nice way to get faculty to be able to identify topics that they're really keen on. And then you could do over a day some sort of focus sessions so that by the end of the day or end of a morning, people went away having what they really wanted and needed to move their initiatives and teaching forward.
Exactly. And in honesty, it's been used like that now in DCU. For exactly that kind of faculty context. The duration of the unconference we ran was a full day conference. So the agenda was decided in the morning within the first hour, while our group frantically, digitally put that agenda together. We did have a keynote, so that's kind of a cheat. We did have somebody that gave us that window of space to make all the technology work. So we had a full day. It was probably ambitious anyway, with a 2-hour window to run an unconference. But we would make it work. We would make it work. So I'll explain to you how it worked, as I say, in the flesh, and how I propose to do it in an online environment. So we need to look at the logistics, and we need to look at all of the tools, because there's a number of different tools that were at play to make all of this happen. But they're all very, very simple and easy to use. Now, because we're not face-to-face, and because we don't have individual rooms to go off to, obviously we're going to be using Zoom breakout rooms. So that is the natural translation. So that piece is easy. You don't need physical space. We all know that now. We have an online space. So check the box. Zoom rooms, breakout rooms for those individual workshop sessions that are proposed. Now, how do you work on the proposals? So I used a tool called Tricider. I actually came across this during my master's, and we were using it for brainstorming. I'm not sure if you've used it before, but this is really simple, obviously free. And the concept behind it is that basically you put up a question or a prompt, and in this case, for this session, and exactly the same format we did for our face-to-face session, we asked, what did people want to talk about? What did they want to share? What information did they want more about? In an ideal world, and we had sent it out in a communication before the conference, the unconference, what we wanted people to do was to come with ideas. So as opposed to just having, you've now got 5 minutes, go, that they did have a little bit of time to give some real consideration about what they might want to talk about. So that went out in a communication before our live unconference. Much the same way, I contacted a number of people who had proposed to come to this unconference session. So I contacted them a couple of days ago, and I asked them what did they want to talk about, knowing that there was going to be more. But it's always good to have a few ideas on the board. And that is exactly what we did in the live session. So the organizing committee had a number of, I'm not going to call them dummy questions because they absolutely weren't, but they were questions that we wanted, or not questions, they were topics that we wanted to discuss. So we started the ball rolling with a number of those ideas on the board. And the idea behind TriCider, and I'm going to share the link with you now in a second, so you can have a go and propose anything that you would like to talk about at the end of this session. All you need to do to make this happen is to share the link. That's all. What I also had for the live session was I had a QR code on the slide that linked directly to TriCider as well. So nobody needed to fumble around with links. Instructions are given out. All you need to do is click add idea. Okay, type in your idea. You can add pros and cons if you like, and you can add arguments as to why you want to discuss this topic, why it's particularly relevant. But at the first stage, it's just throwing out the ideas. So then I probably gave maybe 10 minutes to allow everybody to get their ideas up. I brought everybody up from their computer screens for a moment. And together we had a look at all of the different ideas. And then this is the important bit, because we had 50 people in a room. We had a lot of ideas, but we knew that we had 12 slots on an agenda to fill. So we couldn't talk about, much as we wanted to, all of the topics that were proposed. There is a limited time slot. So we had, you'll see in a moment, a Google Doc with 12 time slots. So we asked everybody then, as kind of phase 2, to vote on all of the topics that were there, to review all of the ideas that had been proposed, and to vote on the ones that they felt that would be most interesting to talk about. And then those with the most votes, the top 12, got taken out and popped into the Google Doc agenda. That little piece there, the taking out of the ideas and being popped into the Google Doc agenda, that's when the keynote speaker came on. So we could frantically do that work behind the scenes. So we knew we had 30 minutes. And at the end of the 30 minutes, we were able to present a full conference agenda. And from that point, it ran like a normal conference, with obviously the caveat that it is an unconference. This is not about presentations. You don't come with your PowerPoints. This is more discursive. This is more workshoppy. This is, again, the rule of two, I was going to say 2 left feet, the rule of 2 feet applies. So it is still slightly different to a traditional conference, but at least it runs. You have a schedule, you go room to room, you have time frames. So would you like a look at TriCider? So should we be running this in its usual context? I would now be transferring you over to TriCider. You can go with the short link, or conveniently, in one of my many documents that I have open. I have the link here that I'll pop into the chat, and you can access TriCider from there. So I'll give you a moment. I'll give you 2 moments to have a look at TriCider, to consider what you would like to talk about, because we will have a conversation at the end of this session, and to propose some ideas. So all you do is click on idea, and then we'll have a look at the ideas, and then I'll get you to vote on them too. Now, the only thing that you do need to know is that to see the ideas going in, you will need to refresh. Look at all the ideas, fabulous. So yes, Kevin's in ahead of the posse, no surprise there. If you'd like to review the ideas now, just take a moment, have a look through the ideas, and use the voting panel on the right-hand side to what you think would be a good thing to discuss. Now, while you're doing that, and I'm not sure if I remembered to share audio on this, but on the day itself, can you hear audio?
Yes.
So the whole idea behind the Unconference is very untraditional. So we actually used music throughout the session, but it was particularly useful just to have some background music while people were working on their ideas, posting up their ideas, voting on the ideas. So, do you have any questions at this point on TriCider and how that works? Everybody happy and comfortable with TriCider itself? Simple, isn't it? Yeah. Okie doke. So, to carry on. So, we've heard the music. So this is our Unconference agenda. Now, in fairness, this was always going to be a bit of a scramble for me to do this single-handedly. This is where a number of people having your back is important. If you're running an Unconference, I would not recommend that you run this single-handedly, because all of those starred items or most voted on items need to be put into your agenda. And I was literally going to do that live. So your agenda is simply a Google Doc, which I have open here somewhere, which is here. So all you're going to need to do is take what, say that one, because that has been voted on. And that's going to go into room 1. And I'm just going to refresh and see have we any other votes in. Okay. And that's going to go into the breakout room. And finally, I think we have, ooh, this is good.
Lisa, I may have 2 different things going here that are similar.
Mm-hmm.
The first one and the third one.
Oh, yes. So I took these questions already and popped them in for you, pre-populated.
Yeah, and then I did it again, a little bit different. I kind of forgot what I did the first time.
That's quite all right. We're going to leave it. This is an example of how it works. So that's simply all of a sudden your agenda. So the thing that held this all together in a live face-to-face session was actually Zeetings, Zeetings.com, because Zeetings allowed us to present. So I had those slides in Zeetings. Zeetings allowed us to share links because all of the attendees were signed in to the Zeetings.com presentation. and it was being broadcast live. So I was able to share the link to the Google Doc directly through the presentation itself. And here it works just as well. I can move your lovely faces out of the way to just share that link directly into the chat so we can all have access to it. So, so far, so good. The face-to-face unconference seems to translate pretty well to the online environment. Okay. So what came next? Well, what actually, whoops, back here. What actually came next in the live session is that we sent everybody off to the different assigned rooms to have their different conversations. The time slots were 30 minutes, and I created a Padlet wall, and we asked that there would be a coordinator in each room, and that somebody would log in. Again, the link to the Padlet wall was been able to be broadcast through the Zeetings presentation. And we asked that they just create a little synopsis of what was discussed and pop it onto the Padlet wall. So obviously that those that weren't in that particular room were able to get a feel for the conversation afterwards. In this case, simply going to use breakout rooms and Google Slides. So I put together a very simple Google Slides presentation, which is being shared with you now. And that would be the hope that at this point, I would open up the breakout rooms. We'd all go into our separate breakout rooms, and the, 40 or 50 people that attended the unconference session would be able to have their individualized conversations within that context. We'd all come back to the room and we would share those Google Slides. So basically the notes or the summaries of what was discussed in each session, at which point we would move on to the agenda session 2, which I would have already pre-populated while you were all busy discussing in your separate breakout rooms. And the second set of conversations would take place, and we'll come back and review. So I'm just going to stop that share just for a second, just to bring us all back into the room. So that's a very broad and rough and quick overview of how I proposed that this unconference session would run. So any questions or concerns about running either face-to-face or an online version? I think both will work. I think it does translate online, even though we're not trying it live at this precise moment because there's not quite enough of us to go into different breakout rooms. But any thoughts?
I love the use of the word organic because that's how I've experienced them as well. It's very fluid, and people are able to have a say in how things get run and what gets discussed. And the rule of 2 feet, I've also heard of pollinators. There's butterflies that spend more time in each group, and honeybees that go from discussion to discussion much more quickly, making their contributions and heading on their way. But love it. Thank you so much for sharing this.
No problem. How did it work for you, Kevin? Was it face-to-face? What tools did you use? Was it paper-based? I'm just curious about the logistics of it.
I've done a little of both. So we leaned heavily on Google tools. So it's nice to see the TriCiter. There used to be a Google tool that behaved like TriCiter. It was basically people could type in their ideas and upvote or downvote them, but they discontinued it. So it's nice to know there's an alternative now. But yeah, the in-person one actually to me is a little messier because you have all these pieces of paper and it's really hard to quickly see, as Debbie brought up, some that have similarities that you could combine, and that actually becomes a conversation when you're kind of constructing the experiences. Hey, it looks like we have three people who want to talk about different aspects of the student experience when we're doing ePortfolio. So what if we combined you all into one space, and who else wants to join them? And then you end up with this, when you have too many topics for discussion, a way to at least put them into buckets or categories that would allow people to find like-minded fellows and have some sort of conversation.
I think that's where where combining the digital in the face-to-face environment worked very well for us, because you could see at a glance those topics that were similar, and it was a group vote. It was the participants were able then to decide which of those were more relevant to them, and then, as the case may be, we didn't have it in our session, but because we were putting the agenda together in Google Docs, we could combine those sessions themselves. So I think the combination of the tech in the face-to-face environment actually did work very well. Brilliant. There was a question there. How many people do you need for this to be effective? I think for this concept, certainly online, maybe 20 to 30. We actually had 150 people signed up for the unconference, and actually I told a lie, there was actually 70 that turned up on the day. There was the usual drop off in numbers. So we were a little concerned how it was going to work with 150 people, given that we'd never run it before. So there was a lot of adrenaline flowing that morning, but it worked extremely well with the group of 70. Obviously the smaller group, and with a select group of 9 enthusiasts, it's not going to work. It's not going to work here. But I think once you have 20 to 30 plus, then I think it could work well. How many have you seen it used with, Kevin? How many people have you seen?
Yeah. So when we did the in-person one, I would say there were triple digits, probably 100 plus. And then online, we've done them with closer to 50 or so. So, but I would say even a group this small, then you end up, if you were to attempt it, it would be challenging, but you'd end up with maybe 2 rooms instead of 5 or something like that. And
yeah, so not exactly an ideal scenario. And really with a group this small, we can have the conversation right here. We don't need to go off anywhere else.
So I'm wondering how this might work in a classroom setting, or I'm thinking of like either med school or chemistry class where people come together to study, and how this could help them kind of break into groups and flow into different study environments. I could see it as being very promising.
That's an interesting take on it. Yeah. Certainly been used in professional learning for a while. It began to seep into, as I said, it started with the programmers, and they actually locked themselves away overnight. They brought sleeping bags for the first ever conference. So I'm not recommending that. But it has definitely begun to seep into education as a good tool for professional learning. I think it'd be fascinating to try it in the classroom. Yeah.
I don't know, like pinging. I work some with grassroots leaders, and I wonder what it would do to bonding. Like if they came overnight, or even if they brought families and you made it like a huge YMCA kind of event, and kids could pick what they wanted to do, and the leaders would. So instead of like always pulling parents away from home life and kids to do these things, you integrated it into a big party. Oh my God, how fun.
Oh, you're putting ideas into my head now. That's the next ePortfolio Ireland meeting sorted.
That's such a great idea. And I work at a large medical school, and we have like huge numbers of students. And one of the things, because this year they're going to be mostly hybrid, they've really struggled. What we hear from the students is they're really struggling with finding their people. When we're on campus, they just all like crowd around a picnic table, and the people who want to do stuff have their whiteboard. But this would be a really great way, I think, of getting people into groups who want to study specific things. So I'm totally gonna, of course, I won't plagiarize. I will attribute this great idea to you, Debbie, and to you.
Oh, send that my way so I can say someone quoted me for something. So
I just have kind of a quick question about the keynote speaker. So you had the keynote speaker come in. Did folks then have like session topics from that keynote that they then added that they wanted to see in one of those slots? Or did the keynote speaker stick around and also participate? How did that kind of facilitation work?
It worked really, really well. We got our keynote speaker to fly in from the UK. She was very well aware of what we were trying to do with the event. Now she's incredibly knowledgeable, and so her presentation was around the whole unconference. The theme really was around assessment with ePortfolio. So she focused very strongly on that. What she then did was provide us, as I said, thinking and working time. She gave us 30 minutes to get the agenda pulled together and plugged into the seatings. So she served a number of purposes, as well as being a wonderful keynote speaker. And then what she did was she became a participant as soon as the keynote was done. And she joined us in wandering around all of the different rooms. So there was an organizing team of 4. Then when she joined us, 5. So we all spread out into the different rooms. But just to say that this doesn't have to just be discussion. One of those pre-populated ideas that I mentioned, that we put into the Tri-Sider before everyone arrived, was actually something that I was passionate about. And I wanted, shall we say, use cases of ePortfolio based assessment and examples of how it was being used in different contexts. So I proposed a session where actually nobody spoke. It revolved around a Google Doc that I designed a template in, and it was the development, or what turned into the development of the ebook for ePortfolio based assessment that we published a couple of months later. But the origins were actually within the unconference. So it was the quietest workshop session I've ever been in, because 20 people came into a room. I gave 1-minute instruction. I said, there is your template. And everybody sat in silence for the 30 minutes, and each copied a page within the Google Doc and contributed their ePortfolio example of assessment in their own context. After the unconference, I contacted everybody to see who was willing to kind of tidy up and work on a little bit more what they had contributed during that half-hour session, and the ebook was born a couple of months later. So it doesn't have to just be discussion. You can use these sessions and you can use Tri-Sider to propose many, many different kinds of formats for what can happen in the room. So that's really, I think, all I have to say about Unconference. It worked really well. The feedback was nothing short of stellar. I've never delivered a presentation or a session where, when the ratings were 1 to 10, everybody gave 10 for every single question. It's never happened to me before. It will probably never happen to me again. But I think everybody really enjoyed the creativity and the flexibility of being able to discuss what they wanted to discuss and share what they wanted to share. And it was just quite innovative and had never been done before. So the feedback from running that kind of session was really quite amazing. So I would absolutely advocate it as an approach. And particularly now, Debbie, you come up with some ingenious ways of embedding that in other contexts as well. So I would highly recommend it.
Well, and I've been thinking about, how we're trying to collect for the ABLE website, like examples or, how studies have been done. This might be a really innovative way to do that, is just to host like a 2-hour silent unconference for people who want to share how they've done research. And then they could build a page and have hyperlinks to their websites and the materials that they've designed. That could be a pretty simple way to collect. You need someone to sort them and put them in a bucket and make it searchable, but what a cool idea.
Absolutely. And when you provide a kind of structure, and I know certainly when we're collating case studies, even within DCU, we they come in all shapes and forms. So providing that kind of template, very helpful. So that would be great. So it's a combination of that and a kind of a shut up and write session, which we've done online as well. And it does work well. All you need is your countdown timer on screen. Happy days. Great idea.
And I would say you could combine the idea of unconference with something that I shared in an open access book that just came out called a virtual work sprint. And I'll put the link in the chat. But the concept is that you're providing structure for students to work in silence, where you're also coaching them to self-directed learning skills. So you use the Pomodoro method, which is 25 minutes working and 5-minute break. And before each half-hour session, every student states their goal for that half hour. And then after 25 minutes, we all come together. And before we do our bio break, everybody reports, I was successful in completing my tasks, or I got distracted, or what have you. And then you do, several cycles of that. And I can imagine if you're going to do a longer than 30-minute innovation session or what have you, having some sort of structure that allows people to set short-term goals and not get distracted and things like that. And also lean on the others. So it was a largely quiet time, but once in a while, a student would pop up with a question and they would ask it in the chat first. And then if it was something that I thought other students could help, then I would turn on the microphone and say, does anybody want to field this question? But students said they felt more accountable because they were in community with other students. And they didn't want to be the one who said, I wasn't productive during this 30 minutes because I was shopping or something else. And so they appreciated it.
Thank you for linking that article. It's got a great visual in it too.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you. Yes, that is also my book. Yeah, not my book. I didn't contribute an example. All I did was put together other people's examples. But yes, that is absolutely the tool. And I just want to share one thing with you because it just relates exactly back, assuming I can get this link here. It relates exactly back to what you were just talking about there, Kevin, in that we have done exactly that, but with our own team within the Teaching Enhancement Unit. So we actually put aside time one Monday a month, and we are given that time and space. We have 1 hour. So there's 5 minutes of instruction, there's 50 minutes of writing, and there's 5 minutes of reporting back on what you wrote during that time. So I'm going to share, I did find the correct link. I'm going to share this with you now. It was based around using this tool because we're all struggling to show the impact of what we do on with our day jobs. So this tool gave us structure to write around, and we use that tool for that 1 hour session once a month, because I don't know about everybody else in the room, but we're lurching crisis to crisis with little time for reflection or evaluation of anything that we have done certainly over the last year and a half. So we got 1 hour once a month, and at least it was something. So there we have it. That was a really useful conversation. I've learned loads. There's been loads of really good links popped into the chat there. I know this wasn't quite the unconference session that we anticipated, but I actually think some really useful ideas have come out of it. So I think absolutely worthwhile in doing.
And a challenge from Tracy, if people didn't catch it. She
Oh, yeah.
said, I hope people in this group would be interested in organizing a session for some time this fall. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more, say no more.
Sign me up anyway. I'd be more than
Yeah, this has been brilliant. I'm getting a little food in. I'm hearing all these great ideas. I'm like assigning people tasks. I'm like, perfect, best session ever.
Well, on that happy note, perhaps then we should call it quits, because a success as it is, small is beautiful. You have 1 hour back in your day, and thank you for persevering in this altered format of an unconference.
Thank you, Lisa. I feel like I've just got so many great tools to use in so many different ways in my life that this has been really, really helpful. And I really appreciate everyone's contributions, because your ideas have been fantastic. So thanks, everyone.